Story 1. I grew up in a small town in central Pennsylvania, about an hour outside of Harrisburg. Nothing special about the place. Fields, woods, and a couple of fast food joints clustered around a gas station. My parents bought our house when I was 2. It's on a corner lot, nothing fancy. 3 bedrooms, split level, with an old concrete basement that always smelled like wet stone and rust. People in town said another house used to be there. Burned down in the 80s. Guy died in the fire. He was in the basement when the whole thing went up. My grandma actually knew the family. Said the man's name was Charlie, quiet guy, had a limp from an accident at the plant, stayed to fight the fire while the rest of the family got out. His body was never recovered, or at least not fully. That's what they said. Anyway, none of that mattered to me when I was a kid. I didn't know anything about Charlie. I just knew our hallway was weird. Always cold, always just a little too dark, even with the lights on. My room was at the very end. You had to pass the bathroom and the attic hatch to get there. I used to sprint down that hallway at night when I had to pee, like something was chasing me. But I told myself I was just a scared kid with an overactive imagination. I was 14 when it happened. It was a school night. Winter. One of those nights where the cold sort of eats into the house, like the insulation gave up trying. My mom was asleep on the couch with the TV still going, and my dad was on a work trip in Erie. I'd been in my room watching YouTube, and around midnight I realized I hadn't showered. I was gonna just skip it, but I remembered gym class the next day and figured I'd at least rinse off quick. I grabbed some clean clothes and opened my door. That hallway, it was wrong. Like before I even took a step out, I felt it. The air was heavier, not cold like before, just dead. Like walking into a room where someone had just been murdered. The hair on my arms stood straight up. I thought maybe the furnace had shut off or the vent in the hallway was busted, but no. This was different. It wasn't just cold. It felt like something hated me. I stepped out thinking I was being stupid, and the second I crossed the doorway, boom, like hitting a wall of static. No sound, no temperature shift, just pressure, like I wasn't supposed to be there. I couldn't breathe right. I backed up a step and it lifted slightly. I stepped forward again and it crushed me. That's the only way I can describe it. I was in a zone of pure hatred. It didn't want me walking down that hallway. I froze. I didn't call for my mom. I didn't even think to. I just stood there, staring into this hallway that suddenly felt like the throat of some giant animal waiting to swallow me. There was nothing visible, no shadows, no movement, but it was there. It was. It wanted me to take another step. It wanted me to get closer. Then something changed. I didn't see it, but I felt it. Behind me on my left side, just past my peripheral vision, I swear to God, I felt someone sprint past me. I didn't hear footsteps, but I felt the wind of it, a strong gust, right at head level, like someone big had just flown past my shoulder and into the hallway. I flinched so hard I dropped my clothes. Then I heard it. A man's voice. One word. I couldn't even tell what he said. It was like a grunt or a bark, but not angry, just loud, commanding. And then the hallway changed. The pressure was gone, like whatever was there had been pushed out. The air wasn't warm, but it felt normal again. I stepped forward, nothing. Just the creak of the wood floor and the quiet hum of the house. I picked up my clothes and looked down the hallway, toward the attic hatch, and I swear I could still feel something running away. Not on legs, not like a person, just retreating, like smoke being sucked out of a room. I stood there for maybe a full minute before I whispered, "Thanks." I didn't know who I was talking to, but somehow in my gut, I knew it was Charlie. And I think whatever was in that hallway, that thing that hated me, didn't belong there. Not in the same way Charlie did. After that, my room felt different, warmer, safer. I never got that cold, sick feeling again. Even the cat started sleeping in there. He never used to. I never saw anything, never heard anything again. But I believe now, not just in ghosts, in things worse than ghosts, things that come around sometimes and don't like you, and things that stand between you and them. And that's all I'm gonna say. Story 2. I live in a small ranch-style house just outside El Paso, Texas, One of those quiet neighborhoods that looks like nothing bad could ever happen in it. No history of weird stuff, no rumors. Just dust, cactus, and heat. My wife Janie died 9 days ago. Car accident, instant. They told me at the hospital she probably didn't even feel it, which I guess is supposed to help, but it doesn't. We'd been married 12 years. She was into spiritual stuff, tarot, crystals, weird books with old bindings. I never paid attention to any of it. I'd roll my eyes when she lit incense or talked about energies. It wasn't my world. She knew that. We loved each other anyway. I hadn't touched any of her stuff yet. Couldn't bring myself to. Every room still smelled like her shampoo and laundry detergent. Every drawer I opened felt like a punch to the gut. It was 2 days ago when it happened. I'd been out that afternoon, just trying to get out of the house. Took a walk around the block, bought a Coke from the corner store, just avoiding the silence. When I came back, our dog, Sparky, a black lab mix, was acting weird. Not barking, not excited like usual, just sitting in the hallway, staring at the guest room door. Janie used that room to keep her stuff, the spiritual things mostly. I hadn't gone in there since she died. The door was shut. I was about to walk past him when I noticed paper on the floor, a mess like something had been torn apart. I looked closer. Cards, dozens of them, some scattered, some in a pile. Tarot cards. I hadn't seen those in years. Janie used to do readings sometimes, but she hadn't touched that deck in maybe 5 years. I didn't even know where it was. I knelt down and started picking them up. They were stiff, glossy, old but in decent shape. The artwork on them was weird. Gothic, kind of medieval. She always liked that style. I gathered almost all of them, all in good shape, except for one. The dog had chewed one up, torn the top left corner and slobbered all over it, but it was still readable. It was the 5 of Cups. The image hit me like a gut punch. There was a figure in a black cloak standing with its back to the viewer. 3 cups were knocked over in front of it, 2 still standing behind. The figure was hunched like mourning. The whole card just screamed grief. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I was just not thinking straight. I opened my phone and Googled it. The 5 of Cups typically represents loss, mourning, and sorrow. It suggests the person is so focused on what's been lost, they don't see what still remains. I sat there staring at that sentence for a while. I should have been freaked out, right? But at first I wasn't. I was just numb. I told myself it was a coincidence. The dog probably dragged the box out from under something and randomly chewed that card, except I still hadn't found the box. The other cards were scattered, but the container? Gone. No sign of it, like the deck had just appeared out of nowhere. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the card, about the figure in black. I left the card out on the kitchen table, just sat there drinking, staring at it for hours. The house was dead quiet, except for the occasional creak from the walls or Sparky pacing the floor. Around 2 a.m., I went to bed. I woke up at 3:11 exactly. I remember because I looked at the clock right after. Something had pulled me out of sleep, like a whisper I didn't quite hear. The kind that brushes against your ear but disappears when you open your eyes. The house was dark. I could hear Sparky growling, low, constant, from the hallway. I got up, heart thumping, and stepped out into the hall. Sparky was sitting again, exact same spot as earlier, just staring at the guest room door, growling now, not moving. His back was rigid, tail down, not barking, just growling. And then I heard it, a shuffle, like a foot dragging across carpet from inside the guest room. I froze. Every hair on my arm stood up. My mind went blank. I just stood there, trying to convince myself I hadn't heard it. Maybe a rat, maybe the house settling, anything. But then came another sound, clearer, a knock, from inside the room, just one. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The door creaked, not fully, just slightly, like pressure was building behind it, like someone was standing on the other side, slowly leaning against it. And then the door handle twitched. I saw it with my own eyes. It jerked, just a little, but enough to make a sound, like someone testing it, quiet, careful. I said, "Who's there?" No answer. I said it again, louder. "Who's in there?" Still nothing, just Sparky growling louder now. No barking. He wasn't protecting. He was terrified. I walked backwards to my room, grabbed my phone, turned the flashlight on, and came back. I kicked the door open. No one there, nothing, just a coldness. The kind that makes your skin tighten. I swear the temperature dropped 10 degrees in that room. But what really made my stomach drop? On the floor right in the middle of the rug was the 5 of Cups. Same card. I had left it in the kitchen. I know I did. It was clean now. No slobber, no torn corner. Perfect condition. And it was upright, not flipped or sideways. As if someone placed it there carefully, deliberately, so I would see it. I backed out of the room and shut the door, locked it. Haven't opened it since. I slept in the living room that night with Sparky curled up against me, shaking like a leaf. The next morning, the card was gone. The whole deck, gone, like it never existed. I still don't know what I believe. I don't think I want to figure it out. But if she's trying to send me a message, if Janie's really out there somewhere, I got it. I see the 2 cups now, but Jesus Christ, I wish she'd found a better way to say it. Story 3. I'm an independent contractor from Kansas City, mostly security systems, some electrical, whatever pays. I've been in hundreds of homes, some pristine, some falling apart, but I'd never walked out of one thinking about the place days later, until this job. This was a few years back, middle of summer. I got a call about wiring cameras and sensors into a property about 20 minutes outside the city. Isolated spot, big old colonial-style house, the kind with narrow hallways and warped floorboards. The guy who hired me was friendly, mid-30s, had just moved in with his wife and little kid. I remember the kid especially, 5, maybe 6. He had that energy that kids have, but also something weird underneath it, like he didn't blink enough or something. Anyway, I started on the setup mid-morning. They were still unpacking. The mom was organizing the kitchen, and the kid was just kind of wandering around. No iPad, no toys, just talking to himself. At one point, I was in the living room pulling cable along the baseboard. The kid walked in and said, "Do you like dogs?" I looked up. "Yeah, you got one?" He smiled and said, "No, I was asking my friend." I kind of smiled back, figured it was a phase or something. Later, his mom came in with a box and said, "He's been talking to this imaginary friend since we moved in. It's kind of creepy, honestly." She laughed, but not in a real way. The kid kept hanging around as I worked. Nothing too unusual. But around noon, I went into the kitchen to grab a bottle of water from my bag. The kid was standing on the counter trying to reach a bag of chips on top of the fridge. I said, Hey, careful, man. I'll get those for you." He looked at me and said, "It's okay. My friend's already going to get them." I figured he meant me or was just being cute. I went back to the wall trying to feed the cable through the panel behind the cabinets. I was maybe 10 feet away from the fridge. About 30 seconds later, loud crash. I whipped around. The chip bag had exploded on the tile floor. Not just fallen, it looked like someone had grabbed it and slammed it down hard. Chips were everywhere. The bag had actually split open. The kid wasn't on the counter. He was kneeling, picking up the chips quietly. Not laughing, not upset, just calm. I said, "What the hell just happened?" He didn't answer right away. Then, without looking at me, he said, "He knocked it off. He didn't mean to." I stood there just staring at him. "Your friend?" He nodded, still not looking at me. I asked, "Where is he now?" He slowly turned and pointed directly on top of the fridge. "He's right there," he said. "He's smiling at you." I felt it, this deep, horrible sensation like the blood behind my eyes pulled tight. I looked up at the fridge. Nothing. Just the humming sound of the appliance and a dusty top surface. But I swear, I felt watched. It wasn't just a chill. It was this raw, primal thing. Like I'd almost walked off a cliff without knowing it. The kid kept looking up at the spot, not talking, just smiling back at whatever he thought he saw. That was it for me. I didn't say anything. I packed up my drill, coiled the cable back into my bag, and walked out the front door. I didn't even say goodbye. They called me 3 times over the next couple of days. I didn't pick up, didn't want to go back, didn't want to hear their voices. It still bothers me, not because of what I saw, but because I didn't see anything. That's the part that gets into your head and just sits there. Something was on top of that fridge. I didn't see it, but I felt it. The same way you know someone's looking at you in a dark room, even if you can't hear or smell or touch them. I've been in 100 homes. That's the only time I've walked away wondering if I left something behind. Or worse, if something left with me. I've never taken another job involving a kid since, not even once. Story 4. I lived in a crappy 1-bedroom apartment off Bascom Avenue in San Jose when this happened. I was 19, broke, and saving for a used car while working part-time at the Winchester Mystery House. You know, the tourist place with the staircase to nowhere and all that. I'd taken the job for fun, figuring it would look cool on a resume, and maybe I'd get a few weird stories out of it. I didn't expect to get this kind of story. Because I didn't drive yet, I'd take the VTA bus, and the only route that lined up with my schedule got me there at around 6:50 in the morning, even though my shift started at 8. Usually I just hang out in the front garden or sometimes help the key holder open up, switching on lights, unlocking doors, that kind of thing. I liked the stillness of the place before all the tourists showed up. One morning I got there like always. A little before 7, the front gate was unlocked, which was weird because usually I had to wait for Steve, the key holder. I figured maybe he was already inside. So I pushed through and headed in. The inside of the house at that hour was different. Not scary, just quiet, like the walls were holding their breath. I walked into the front parlor, flipped the first breaker, and started my way through the house. Most of the lights were old-school push buttons, and some of the rooms didn't even have modern wiring. You had to do them in order, or the whole grid would freak out. We had a sheet with instructions taped near the coat closet. I remember walking into the Daisy bedroom, which is near the back of the house, one of the original rooms Sarah Winchester actually used, and that's where I saw him. A man, middle-aged, standing near the window. White overalls, a brown undershirt, paint-streaked boots. Looked like he belonged on a scaffolding somewhere. He had a big bristly mustache, like the kind guys had in old war photos. And he was just standing there, looking at the glass like he was checking it for smudges or something. I was startled, sure, but not scared. We had contractors come in sometimes to fix walls or patch up things for authenticity. So I just said, "Morning." He looked up, smiled politely, and nodded. "Guten Morgen," he said, with a thick German accent. That made me pause. I didn't think much of it, just thought, oh, foreign worker maybe. Then he turned back to the window. I didn't want to bother him, so I moved on to the next room, finished my route, and about 20 minutes later, I ran into Steve near the servants' staircase. I told him casually, "Hey, who's the new guy?" "The one in the Daisy room?" "I think he's German. Must be with maintenance or something." Steve gave me this weird look. "No one's scheduled today. We're between crews." I kind of shrugged it off. "Well, he's here. White overalls, big stash. He said good morning to me." Steve's face didn't change, just got still. He didn't say anything for a second. Then he motioned for me to follow him. We walked out of the main house and into one of the old sheds they'd converted into a crew hangout. Inside, there was a bulletin board with random photos from past tours, staff parties, historical restoration stuff. He pointed to a yellowed black and white photo, probably from the early 1900s. There were 8 men in the picture, all wearing overalls, standing in front of what looked like the greenhouse that used to be on the property. And there he was, third from the left, exact same mustache, same eyes, same faint smile. "That's Clyde," Steve said. My mouth felt dry. "He's one of ours, shows up now and then." I laughed like an idiot. "Come on." But Steve just stared at me. "You're not the first one to see him. Usually only early in the morning. He never talks, though." I opened my mouth to say he did talk to me, but I couldn't seem to get the words out. We went back to work like nothing happened. The rest of the day I felt off, like I'd brushed up against something I shouldn't have. I kept thinking about the way Clyde had looked out the window, not like a guy admiring the view, but like he was checking it, inspecting it, making sure it still held, I didn't see him again after that, but weird things started happening during my last few weeks there. Cold spots, doors clicking shut when no one else was in that wing, and always around 7 a.m. When I gave my 2 weeks notice, I didn't tell anyone why. My last day was a Thursday. I showed up early like always, walked the house one more time by myself. I stood in the daisy room for a while, half hoping and half dreading he'd be there again. He wasn't. But as I was getting ready to leave, heading back down the main hall, I heard the piano. Clear as anything, coming from the grand ballroom. Just 4 notes, slow and soft. The opening of Für Elise. I know it because my mom used to play it all the time when I was a kid. The thing is, the piano in the ballroom doesn't work. It's roped off and hasn't had strings for decades. It's just for show. But I heard it. I stopped dead in the hallway. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. Then it stopped, and that was it. I didn't go back inside, and I don't talk about this stuff often. People don't believe you. They nod, smile, say cool story, and move on. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. Story 5, and I live in Ontario. Small town, pretty quiet. Grew up in a normal house, normal parents, normal everything. If you'd asked me back then about ghosts or demons or anything paranormal, I would have laughed in your face. I was a kid who cared about Pokemon and candy, not spirits or whatever. This happened when I was about 9, maybe 10. My little brother was 5 or 6. It was Easter Sunday, and my parents thought it'd be fun to do an Easter egg hunt inside the house. Not outside because it was raining, so they hid those plastic eggs all over. Kitchen, closets, bathrooms, even their bedroom. They put $1 coins inside them, which to us at that age felt like finding treasure. There was a catch, though. They set a 30-minute timer. Whatever eggs we didn't find by then, they'd keep. Probably just a way to stop us from tearing the place apart. Anyway, when they hit the timer, my brother and I bolted straight to their bedroom at the back of the house. We figured we'd start furthest away and work our way back. Makes sense, right? We went straight into their bathroom. Door open, lights on, hunting under the sink, behind the towels, shower ledge, the works. I remember closing the bathroom door because there's this little shelf behind it you can't see unless it's shut. And sure enough, egg. I grabbed it. That was the last normal moment. The second I let go of the doorknob, we heard the click. Door locked. I laughed at first like, ha, nice one, Mom. Cheating, huh? My brother was giggling too, thinking it was all part of the game. I banged on the door yelling, "Hey, not fair! You guys locking us in?" Typical kid stuff. But then, everything changed. There was this rumble, not from outside. It was like the air inside the bathroom thickened, and the ground, the actual floor, started to shake. The glass panel on the shower rattled. The blinds slammed against the window. It was like something huge was coming, not an earthquake. I'd never been in one, but this felt wrong. Then came the light. It lit up the entire bathroom through the window. Not lightning, not flashing like a storm. It was just pure white, blinding, coming in from outside, flooding the walls, the floor, even behind my eyelids when I squeezed them shut. And this sound, God, the sound, like a jet engine mixed with a scream, deep and low, shaking my chest from the inside. I remember grabbing my brother, who had stopped laughing by then. His face was blank, like he didn't even know what to feel. I yelled at him, "Get in the cabinet! Go, go!" There was this sink cabinet under the counter, and I tried to shove him in, thinking of those earthquake drills they taught us in school. He didn't fully fit, but I pushed him as far as he'd go and threw myself in front of the door, using my back to block it. I don't know why. Instinct, I guess. I thought we were going to die. Everything was still shaking. The noise was still growing. The window was still glowing. It felt like the world was going to rip open. I remember crying, like sobbing, not quiet tears, like full-on screaming, snot everywhere, chest-heaving panic. I couldn't think. I could barely breathe. And then, silence, instant. The door opened behind me, and it all stopped. The shaking, the noise, the light. Gone. Just gone. I turned and saw my mom standing there, frozen in the doorway, holding an Easter basket in one hand. Her face was pale, confused. I lunged at her, crying hard, grabbing her like I'd just been pulled out of hell. She looked down at me like I'd lost it. My dad appeared behind her, asking what happened. My mom rushed over to the cabinet and yanked my brother out. He started crying too, gasping, like he didn't even realize he'd been holding his breath. I tried explaining. There was an earthquake, I said. And lights. There were lights. And the sound and the shaking. Didn't you hear it? They didn't. My dad looked at me like I was making it up. But my brother, he backed me up. He said it too. The shaking, the lights, the noise. He couldn't explain it, but he remembered all of it. He was still shaking. My mom said they hadn't heard a thing. They only came upstairs because we were taking too long, and she thought we were stuck or goofing off. She said they heard nothing. That's what kills me to this day. Nothing. We were locked in that room with something. It never happened again. Nothing even close. But I've never forgotten that feeling. That pressure in the air, the vibration under my feet, the light that came from nowhere, the sound like the earth splitting open. I don't know what the hell that was. I've tried to rationalize it 1,000 different ways. Weather, planes, maybe some freak seismic thing. But deep down, I know none of that fits. You don't forget something like that. It happened once, and that was enough. I don't laugh at ghost stories anymore. I don't watch horror movies for fun. Story 6. I was 21, living at home in central Pennsylvania. It was one of those small towns where every street feels like it's holding on to some old memory. The kind of place that doesn't get a lot of new construction, just old homes with bad wiring, weird smells in the walls, and half-finished basements. Our house was built in the late 1800s, passed down a couple of generations before we moved in. My parents got it cheap in '99 after the previous owner passed away in a hospital bed. I never asked what kind of condition it was in before the flip, but I know the whole downstairs had been gutted and redone before we moved in. My dad mentioned once the layout used to be different, but that was about all I knew. I remember this one night more clearly than I remember any birthday or holiday. It was late, probably a little after 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep. I had come downstairs to grab a soda and ended up sitting on the living room couch scrolling through my phone. The house was completely still, lights off except for the glow of the TV that was playing on mute. Then I heard it. Footsteps, loud ones, like boots on wood, coming up the stairs. I froze. We only had one staircase and it wasn't on the side of the room I was facing. It was behind me, completely across the living room and around the corner. But the footsteps were coming from my left, like 5 feet from the couch. I could hear them, creaking, climbing steadily upward. But there was nothing there, just a wall. I sat up straight and muted the TV entirely. The sound was still going, not faint, not subtle. I swear on everything, it was like someone heavy was walking up wooden stairs right there beside me. But there were no stairs there, just drywall. I stood up fast, heart racing, and backed away. I thought maybe I was losing it, maybe some kind of weird echo in the house. But the sounds weren't random, they were deliberate, rhythmic. It started low, like they were coming up from a basement that didn't exist. There was nothing, just an empty wall. And I swear it sounded like someone reached the top step and just stopped. I bolted upstairs. I didn't even think about it, just ran. I didn't go to my room. I went into my parents' room and just laid down on the floor, heart going like a drum. My mom sat up like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I just said, "I heard something downstairs." I couldn't explain it right then. I was shaking, like something about it wasn't just weird. It was wrong. I didn't sleep that night. Next morning, my mom's making coffee, and she gives me that, "Are you okay?" look. I told her everything, how I heard someone walking upstairs that don't exist, how clear it was, how it wasn't just some vague sound in the house. It was right there. She didn't laugh. She didn't tell me I imagined it. She just looked pale and said, "That's where the old stairs used to be." I just stared at her. She walked over to the far wall of the living room and pointed. They tore them out during the remodel before we bought it. They used to come up here. She took me upstairs into her room and showed me the ceiling. Right above where I'd been sitting the night before, there was an old seam in the plaster, a square indentation like something had once been built into the ceiling and then patched over. That's where the top of the stairs came out, right into this room. I didn't believe her. I mean, how would she even know that? She pulled out a manila folder from one of the drawers, full of old documents. Permits, inspection notes, pictures from the listing when they bought the house. She showed me one of the original floor plans. Sure enough, there were two staircases in the house back then. The one we still used, and the other one, the one I heard. I just stood there. I didn't say anything. What do you even say to that? The stairs had been gone for over 10 years. I had heard them being used. I can't explain it. I've never had anything like that happen again. And to be honest, I try not to think about it much because when I do, it messes with my head. It's not like I saw some shadow figure or a cold breeze or lights flickering or any of the crap you see in ghost stories. It was just footsteps. But they were real. And they were in a place they absolutely should not have been. You hear people talk about haunted houses and you think it's always dramatic. Voices in the night, scratches on the walls, stuff moving by itself. But this was worse. It was quiet, simple, impossible. And I still don't know what I believe. If I hadn't seen those floor plans with my own eyes, I probably would have chalked it up to a dream or sleep deprivation. But I did see them. My mom did know. And there was that mark in the ceiling, like a scar the house was still carrying from years ago. Story 7. I live just outside of Asheville, North Carolina, out near the Pisgah Woods. Not deep woods, but far enough where there's not a lot of light once the sun dips. My name's Corey. I'm 38 now, but this happened back in 2009. I wasn't one of those people who believed in ghosts or angels or any of that crap. I still don't know what I believe, but I can tell you for certain, I saw something I shouldn't have, something I still can't explain. It was the week after Thanksgiving, a cold Thursday night. I just finished a double at the mill and decided to take the old logging road shortcut home. I'd only started using it recently. Saves me 15 minutes easy, and at that hour, there's never anyone out there. No lights, no houses, just thick trees and gravel. No shoulder either, just ditches on both sides. I was beat. Not falling asleep beat, but that kind of exhausted where your arms feel heavy on the wheel. I had the radio up, windows cracked, doing everything I could to stay alert. I remember thinking, just 3 more miles and I'm home. And then I came around this bend. I wasn't speeding, not really. And that's when it happened. She was just there, standing in the road. No time to think, just 2 huge eyes reflecting the high beams. Young girl, late teens maybe. Long black hair, pale as hell. She was wearing a blouse, maybe light pink or white, and jeans. She looked real. There was nothing ghostly about it. She looked just like a person caught in the wrong place at the worst possible second. I swerved hard to the right, instinct, no time to process, slammed on the brakes, tires skidded on loose gravel, and I felt the jolt as the front end dove into the ditch. My seatbelt locked up and my chest hit the wheel. My first thought, I hit her. No way I didn't. I threw the door open and ran back, heart pounding so hard I couldn't hear the radio anymore. I was yelling, hey, are you okay? Nothing, just wind and trees. I started scanning the side of the road with my flashlight. Nothing, no body, no blood, not even a shoe. I kept walking back up and down, checking the tree line. I was certain I'd find her lying there, hurt or worse. I was even rehearsing how I'd explain it when the cops came. She came out of nowhere. I didn't see her until it was too late, but there was nothing. After about 10 minutes, a pickup truck came down the road and slowed when they saw my car in the ditch. It was an older guy, said his name was Roy. I flagged him down and told him I thought I hit someone. He got out and helped me look. He didn't seem convinced, but agreed to drive to the gas station up the road and call the sheriff, since neither of us had a signal. About 20 minutes later, 2 deputies showed up with flashlights. They took my statement, walked the whole road in both directions, and even brought out a K9 unit just in case. But it was like she'd never been there. No tracks, no clothes, nothing. Then one of the deputies gave me the look. You know the one. The have you been drinking look. I told him no. They gave me the field test anyway. Walk the line, follow the finger, all that. I passed, of course. I was sober. Just scared out of my mind. Eventually, they told me it was probably a deer, or maybe I'd fallen asleep for a second. I know what I saw. That was no deer. That was a girl. A person. I saw her face. I remember the whites of her eyes and the way her arms started to come up, like she was trying to brace herself. They towed my car out of the ditch and let me go. I got home around 2 in the morning, way later than I should have. My wife Liz was waiting on the porch with her robe on and her arms crossed. She looked like she was ready to yell at me, but then saw my face. "What the hell happened?" she asked. I told her everything, exactly like I just told you. She didn't say anything for a while, then she went inside without a word. I followed her. She didn't ask any questions, just walked straight upstairs. A couple minutes later, she came back down holding her old high school yearbook. She was pale, real pale. She told me, "Just flip through the senior pages." I thought it was weird, but I did it. Got to the 3rd page and my stomach dropped. There she was. I froze. It was her, same black hair, same eyes, same kind of blouse even. I said, "Is this a joke?" And Liz just shook her head slowly. I asked her, "Who is this?" Her voice cracked when she said it. Her name was Katie Gibbons. She died 3 years ago. Same road, same bend. I didn't say anything for a while, just stared at the photo. Katie had this half smile, kind of shy looking. The kind of face that sticks with you. Liz told me Katie had been hit by a drunk driver late at night and thrown into the ditch. Took hours before anyone found her. The guy who did it never stopped. No cameras out there, no witnesses. Locals said it was cursed or haunted or whatever. I had no idea. I wasn't from Asheville originally. Moved here in 2007. I'd never heard the story, never seen that yearbook. But I picked her out of a page of strangers like I knew her. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face lit up in those headlights. The exact same as in that yearbook photo, just alive. Just for a split second, and then gone. I don't use that road anymore. Story 8. I'm not the kind of person who believes in ghost stories. I still don't know what I saw, what we all saw, but I've stopped pretending it was just in my head. I guess you could say this was the moment I started questioning everything. This happened when I was 10. We just moved into this busted old rental house in a small town in Texas, middle of nowhere, literally surrounded by fields. My mom was trying to hold it together after my dad bailed, and she was working 2 jobs. We couldn't afford much, and the landlord gave us a deal on this place because no one wanted it. We found out why pretty fast. It was just me, my mom, and my younger brother Caleb. The house was weird. It had that kind of silence that feels too heavy, like the walls were listening. It smelled like bleach and wet wood when we first walked in, and that never really went away. The backyard was big but overgrown, like no one had touched it in years. At the very back, maybe 20 yards from the house, there was this large shed, or maybe it used to be a barn. Big enough to be a small house. No lock on the doors, but we never went inside. Not after what happened. The shed had this one window up high, almost like an attic window. From the kitchen window, you could just barely see it if you stood on your toes. First couple of weeks, nothing much happened, unless you count the nightmares. Caleb kept saying he saw people in our room at night, and he'd wake up crying, saying someone was standing on the ceiling. I didn't take it seriously. He was 7. Kids are weird. But one day we were all in the kitchen. It was a Sunday, I remember that clear, because Mom didn't have work and we were all having cereal together, which didn't happen often. The sun was out, everything seemed fine. Caleb was whining about wanting cartoons. I was zoning out, staring out the kitchen window at the shed. That's when I saw it. There was a figure in the window. It wasn't like dramatic. It wasn't moving or glowing. It was just there. A white shape, like a person standing perfectly still behind the glass. Female, I think. She had a headscarf tied under her chin and one of those old-timey dresses, the kind I'd only seen in history books. She wasn't looking at us. She was facing to the side, like looking out into the field. I remember freezing with the spoon halfway to my mouth. I didn't say anything at first. I just kept staring. I thought maybe it was a trick of the light, but she didn't move. Not at all. She was too solid to be a reflection. I finally said, "Mom, there's someone in the shed." She looked up, annoyed, then followed my gaze. Caleb turned and squinted. My mom stared for a good 10 seconds before standing up, slowly, and walking to the window. "What the hell?" she muttered. The three of us just stood there, staring at this woman in the window. She didn't move, didn't blink. Her face was turned, so we couldn't see her expression, but there was something off about how still she was. Not like a person, like a picture, a projection, a mistake in reality. Caleb whispered, "Is that a ghost?" Mom didn't answer. She just stared. I think we all expected her to disappear if we blinked, but she didn't. She just stayed. For minutes. No movement, no sound, nothing. The longer we looked, the sicker I felt. I mean that literally. I started getting this pressure in my head, like I was about to throw up or scream. Caleb said his nose was bleeding. I didn't even notice until I looked down and saw the blood running down his upper lip. That's when Mom moved. She grabbed a dish towel, pressed it to Caleb's face, and said quietly, "We're not going out there." She locked the back door, then the front. She told us to stay in the living room and turned on the TV, trying to act normal, but she kept glancing out the window every 5 minutes. The woman was gone by noon. Just gone. No footprints, no nothing. We never opened that shed again. A couple days later, Mom called the landlord and asked him about the history of the property. He got real quiet and told her we shouldn't worry about that shed and just keep the doors locked, okay? She told him we saw something. He hung up. That night, she packed a few bags and we slept in a motel. We moved out a week later. Didn't even try to get our deposit back. She said something about asbestos or black mold, but I knew that wasn't the reason. She never admitted it, not to this day. I've asked her since as an adult. I'll say, "Hey, do you remember that house? That woman in the window?" She gets pale every time and just says, "That place wasn't right." I've Googled the address, tried to find history, news articles, anything. All I found was that there was a fire on the property in the 60s. 3 people died. No one ever rebuilt the shed, just left it as is. Story 9. I was working in Sheffield back in 2019, doing domiciliary care. You know, helping old folks in their own homes, washing, dressing, making tea, that sort of thing. I'd been in the job for about a year and a half by then. Death didn't really rattle me anymore. When you've cleaned up after someone who's passed in their sleep and still have to clock in the next day like nothing happened, it sort of wears down your fear. You just get on with it. This one client, I'll call her Mrs. C, she was in her late 80s, frail, no family, no visitors. She lived in this big old terrace house on the outskirts. Place was way too big for one person, but she refused to leave it. Said she'd die there. Honestly, I thought she might. Bed was in the living room, commode by the door, kettle always whistling away. She couldn't get up the stairs anymore, not even with help. So she stayed on the ground floor, day and night. That week, I got put on all her calls, morning, lunch, tea in bed. First couple visits went fine. Bit quiet, but nothing odd. The third day, I had the late shift. Bed call around 6:30 p.m. It was pitch black by then. Winter in the UK gets dark fast. I remember the wind had picked up and there was a rattling sound outside, like the bin lids weren't fastened. Anyway, usual routine, helped her wash, got her in her nightie, gave her a cup of tea. She seemed tired, didn't say much except, "Thank you, love," over and over. I nodded, smiled, pretended I wasn't already counting down to my own bed. Then came the part I hated, emptying the commode. Her bathroom was upstairs, so I had to carry this heavy plastic container full of piss up a steep, narrow staircase with no landing. And it was always pitch black in the hallway, like the lights barely worked. I remember I flipped the switch at the bottom and the bulb flickered like it was deciding whether to work or not. As I got to the first step, something felt off. Not just cold or dark, but weird. The air felt thick, like walking into static. The hair on my arms stood up even though I had my coat on. I looked up toward the top of the stairs and for a second, I swear, I thought I saw something move. Just a shape, like a shadow that didn't match the ones being cast by the lights. But I couldn't just stand there with a piss bucket, so I forced myself to move. Took the stairs quick, not running, but quick enough. Got into the bathroom, dumped the commode, Flushed, washed my hands. Normal. Told myself I was being daft. Then I turned the light off. The second I did, I heard it, a thud. Not a creak or a groan like old houses do, but a solid sound, like something heavy had hit the floor. My stomach just dropped. I rushed downstairs thinking maybe Mrs. C had tried to get out of bed and fallen, but she was still in bed. Calm. Her eyes were half closed. What wasn't calm was the big armchair that had been next to the wall earlier. Now it was pressed up against the kitchen doorway. It was blocking it off, like someone had pushed it hard across the room. That chair was heavy, like really heavy. One of those old wooden ones with thick cushions. Mrs. C couldn't have moved it in 100 years, and no one else was in the house. I said, "Has someone been in?" Just like that, because I didn't know what else to say. And I started pushing the chair back, but it didn't move easy. It was like something was resisting me. I had to really shove it with both arms. That's when she looked at me, eyes fully open now, and said, real casual, "Oh, it's all right, dear. You can leave it there. Harold likes to sit there." I stopped pushing. "Sorry?" I asked. "Harold," she said with this soft smile, looking straight at the chair. "He likes to sit near me at night. I think he's missed me today." Now, I'd read her care plan. Husband's name was Harold. Died 15 years ago. No visitors since then. She didn't have dementia or anything, just old. I didn't answer her. I just sort of nodded, not sure if I was supposed to agree or leave. And then, this part I will never ever forget, as I was locking the front door behind me, I heard it clear as day. A man's voice, deep and low, saying something I couldn't make out. Just a mutter, but definitely a male voice. Followed by Mrs. C laughing. I stood there frozen on her front step, key still in the lock. There was no one in that house but her. I walked straight to my car, didn't even bother writing the visit notes. Next morning I rang the office and asked to be taken off her calls. Told them I didn't feel comfortable. They didn't ask questions. Probably weren't the first time someone had said that about her place. I never went back. Story 10. I don't believe in ghosts. Never did. Not growing up in Queens. Not when my cousin swore he saw our grandma sitting on the edge of his bed the night she died. Not even after the Ouija board crap in college. But this one night at the theater, messed me up in a way I don't talk about unless I've had too much to drink. I was a night manager at a Regal in upstate New York. Town was quiet, boring, mostly families and old folks. The kind of place where nothing exciting ever happens, which is why high school kids and stoners work movie theater jobs. I wasn't a kid though. I was 27 and barely scraping rent, so I took the job seriously. Probably more than I should have. The theater was one of those older ones. Not ancient, but built in the late 90s. Still had ceiling catwalks and a manual breaker room, weird crawl spaces above the auditoriums to change out lights. Only managers had keys to most of that. We'd close around 2:30 a.m. on weekends, and I'd often be the only one left, locking up, killing the breakers, doing final walks. This happened on a Saturday night after a Hobbit midnight premiere. Place was trashed. People don't realize how much garbage gets left behind. Popcorn, puke, diapers. I was there with one other manager, Jason, a chill guy, maybe 22. We split duties and I told him to start clearing upstairs while I finished the breaker walk. The breaker room was near Theater 3, and I had just finished flipping the last row of switches when I heard footsteps running. Not walking, running. Fast, bare feet by the sound of it. Slapping against tile. I figured it was Jason, screwing around or maybe trying to spook me. I radioed him, "Yo, you downstairs already? Hit the game machines if you are." His voice came back casual. "Nah, still in the booth. Just finishing 6 and 7. I stopped, looked toward the hallway, heard nothing now. I opened the breaker room door and looked around. Everything was off, dim, dead silent. That low, creepy silence big buildings get when they're shut down. I scanned the hallway, saw nothing, then noticed a movement. Quick, like someone's heel disappearing into Theater 3. I swear it looked like a bare foot. I radioed again. "Did you shut down 3 yet?" Jason. "Yeah, it's already dark." I told him I thought someone snuck in, maybe a girl. I asked him to shine the booth light into 3 and tell me if he saw anything. A few seconds passed. Then he radioed, "Middle row, she's laying on her back." My gut dropped. I stormed into Theater 3 with my flashlight. Room was pitch black, smelled like stale popcorn and feet. I climbed the steps fast, aimed my light at the middle row. Empty, nothing, not even a jacket or spilled drink. "Very funny," I said into the walkie. "You got me." I looked up at the booth window expecting to see Jason laughing, but he wasn't. He was standing there frozen, his mouth open, staring straight at me. He wasn't playing. I turned around fast, ready to get jumped or something. Junkie, crazy lady, I don't know. Nothing behind me, just seats. Jason's voice came back, shaky this time. "She was right there. Middle row, I saw her." I stepped toward the screen and looked at the little access slit, pulled it aside and slipped behind the curtain into the tight space behind the screen. "Lady, I'm calling the cops if you don't come out," I said, loud. Nothing, just the thrum of the building's power shutting down. I stood there a second, then backed out and looked toward the exit door. And that's when I saw her. She was standing in the doorway, completely naked. Pale, not just pale like paper. No hair, not shaved, like she never had any. No expression, just standing there, arms down, looking straight at me. Her eyes were wide open, but vacant. Office, I didn't move. My first thought wasn't ghost. It was, holy shit, this woman is on something. I stepped over the front rail to go toward her, and the second I looked away to swing my leg over, she was 20 feet closer. I blinked. She was just there now. Closer, still staring. I shouted, "Ma'am!" She flinched like a full-body twitch, then bolted down the aisle. I chased her. I don't know why. I wasn't thinking, just pure instinct. I ran after her through the back door into the hallway. She turned the corner into the left corridor, the one that wraps around to the restrooms and storage. I followed maybe 3 seconds behind. She was gone. Gone. That hallway's maybe 30 feet long. Dead end to the left, storage closet to the right. I checked both. Nothing. Door to the outside was locked from the inside. Alarm armed. She never left. I stood there frozen, breathing hard, just staring at the empty space. Then it hit me. I ran back to the office, pulled up the hallway camera. Footage was clear, high definition, timestamp matched. I saw myself run out of Theater 3, round the corner, and stop. That's it. No one ahead of me, just me. Jason came over my radio after a minute. "Did you get her?" I couldn't answer. I just stared at the screen. I kept rewinding it over and over. There was never anyone else. Just me. Running. We locked up together that night. Neither of us talked much.